Twilight Gets a Puppy. By TDR. Chapter 15. Dog Eat Dog. Epilogue. Shining Armor, Ross, and Spike raced through the streets, cutting across yards, hopping over fences, tearing down alleys and interrupting backyard parties. Rushing through a Griffin's cookout, Ross snagged a hot dog, thanking the chef before clambering over the next fence as he scarfed it down. A few houses later, Shining Armor leaps over a fence with Spike barely holding on. The white unicorn yelps as he starts to come down in a large in-ground pool. His horn glows and a disc-like shield forms under him as he lands on it, his momentum carrying them skidding across the surface of the pool to the other side, where he hops onto the pool deck and continues to run, bursting through some bushes and leaving three mares confused as to what just happened. A moment or so later, Spike waddles back before the mares with a grin under his comically large mustache. Spike took a small bow. "Good evening, ladies. Lovely night, isn't it?" Spike chimed, offering a claw. "I'm Spike, pleasure to meet such pretty mares." The three mares in question tittered at the compliment, only to yelp as Ross ran around the pool, darting between them and Spike, scooping up the little dragon as he continued the mad chase after Shining. "Right me!" Spike called back after them as he was carried off into the night. **. Shining arrived at the house to see the carriage still out front. He grinned, rushing towards it, only for Ross to collapse on top of him, panting heavily and flailing about as was not even remotely used to running. It took Spike and Shining both to get the moon dog into the house, where he collapsed like a lump in the middle of the living room floor, whimpering. "You need to exercise more." Shining chided, his eyes widening as Ross's ears shifted into a different position with a few flicks. "Oh, I see you need a book otherwise, but that you can't perfectly." "She's coming in," Spike hissed, hopping up into a chair and grabbing a random book from a shelf before he realized what it was and tossed it back, sticking out his tongue that he grabbed one of his mother's romance novels. Shining snatched up the sports page of the paper. Glancing over to the others, his horn flared and he yanked Ross and Spike's mustaches off their face, shoving them under the couch, much to Spike's annoyance. Ross simply laid there like an exhausted lump. Twilight closed the door behind her, walking towards the stairs before glancing into the living room and seeing her brothers there. "So how was your date?" Shining asked, trying to sound casual. "It was good. Seems we're not a fit for each other, however." Twilight smiled a little as she regarded the three before her ears flattened to her head as she glared at them. "Of course you three already knew that, didn't you?" "Bark!" Ross asked. "Don't give me that. Honestly, how dumb do you think I am? I can understand maybe seeing you at the theater just because I know Ross wanted to see that show, but I'm not even going to ask how you got into the restaurant as waiters, or what was up with the dress and stroller. Were you trying to ruin my first date? Seriously, what do you three have to say for yourselves?" Shining winced, trying to find the words to defend himself. Spike and Ross simply looked at each other, nodded in a silent agreement. Both then pointed to Shining Armor. It was his idea. They both chimed in. Twilight's attention focused on Shining as he glared at the other two. "Traitors!" Shining cursed as his younger brothers took that opportunity to slip out of the room. Twilight glared at him, though Shining decided that he was the big brother. It was his job to protect and watch over his sister. He stood up, walking over to Twilight, his jaw set, as he cleared his throat. "Look, Twily. I get that you are upset, but we were worried about you and decided to tag along, so Blue Blood didn't do anything. I was simply trying to protect you for your own good," Shining explained, his eyes widening as he noticed Twilight's eye suddenly twitch at his last words. "For my own good? For my own good?" Twilight roared as unpleasant memories of the last time those words were used against her came up. Her hair sprung up in a number of places and her mane and tail started smoking for a moment before she suddenly calmed down, staring daggers at her older brother. "You know what? No. I'm not even going to do anything to you about this. This boneheadedness of yours." "Boneheadedness?" Shining questioned the choice of words, still trying to stand up tall against her anger. "Yes. I am not doing anything. I'm just going to tell Cadence what happened since she helped set this date up. Twilight growled. She can deal with you. For the second time that night Shining found himself making a noise much like a dying whale as he felt his panic rise. Asterisk. Ross and Spike's room. You know we're not getting out of this unscathed, right? Spike shuddered. Either Twilight or Shining is gonna get us. Ross shrugged. Woof. Oh yeah, good point, let me check. Spike stated, waddling over to his bed and pulling out a scroll, opening it up to look it over. Let's see. Mom had 10 bits on Dad screwing up the date, so she loses. None of us screwed it up, so Twinkle Shine, Moon Dancer, and Minute lost out. Clearly they didn't hook up, so Cadence loses her bits. Woof. Hey, you knew that was a long shot when you placed your bet. Seriously, meets another pony and falls in love mid-date. Sounds like some sort of romantic comedy. Spike snorted. And my catastrophic failure option didn't pay out. Let's see. Shining Lights said she would do something dumb and he would run. Lemon Hearts gets the pot. She said neither would like each other and that's the closest. Bark. Yeah, okay, Lyra's interrupted by an invasion of bug ponies was a bit more out there than yours, but still. Spike rolled his eyes. Asterisk. Canterlot Castle. Prince, how did your date go? A voice called from behind him. Blue Blood paused, looking back as the regal form of Princess Celestia strode towards him. He offered a small bow to her before he spoke. Quite well, Prin. Auntie Celestia. I do not think there will be another, however. Though we both agreed to that. We are a little too different for anything to work. Prince stated, walking a little slower to keep pace with Celestia as she moved beside him. His aunt had been nice enough to offer him and his chauffeurs a place to stay in the castle for the night so that after the date they wouldn't be running down the mountain too late to get to the summer home his family was staying at while the manor here in Canterlot was having work done on it. Still, despite her generosity, Prince couldn't help but let a touch of annoyance creep into his voice as he spoke again. Though honestly I am not sure why you are asking me such things since you know how it went. Prince continued, his tone causing Princess Celestia to slow a little, though the prince didn't match her speed this time. Oh? And how would I know that? Celestia asked. Princess, please. Prince sighed. I may not be your student and I may be a blonde, but seriously, even if one of my classes had not trained me to detect scrying, the little lapel you gave me was practically glowing with your magic. I'm amazed Twilight didn't ask about it. If I could detect such with my meager skills, she certainly could. Oh dear. Celestia chuckled slightly. I suppose I did not think that far ahead, though I was a little too curious as to how it would go. While I appreciate your concern, Prince. Auntie. And I do thank you for letting me stay in the guest rooms tonight, I feel this sort of spying demands some sort of repercussion. Prince stated. Oh? Going to bring me before the court for illegal spying? Celestia smiled. Of course not. Even if the charges were to stick, there is no one willing to enforce such a thing on you. Prince smiled as he reached the door to his room. I'm simply going to tell Princess Cadence what happened when I talk to her tomorrow and let her deal with you. Good night, Auntie. Celestia flinched as the door closed, before chuckling a little at his words. Blue Blood had a promising future ahead of him. Pity he and Twilight didn't work out. Still, what she had planned for Twilight was coming far sooner than she liked. It might be for the best if Twilight wasn't dating. If they had hit it off, Celestia didn't think she could have sent Twilight away to get what was needed with any sort of ease. For now, however, she had best get to the kitchen and stock up on cake. Cadence would likely use her love of them against her somehow when the Pinkalicorn found out about her spying on the couple. Cadence took her shipping very seriously. Asterisk. Canterlot, outside the side gate. A thud and clatter of hooves drew one of the royal guards' attention to the courtyard. Stepping out into the night, the white-furred stallion looked over the massive doors leading to the road outside and numerous chariots owned by the princess and other visiting nobles parked in the courtyard. His ears perked up from his golden armor as he moved around the side of Prince Blueblood's carriage, certain this was where the sound came from. His eyes scanned over everything without noticing anything out of place or particularly interesting. He shrugged and turned to head back inside when he paused, his brain telling him something was wrong. The stallion turned back to look around the carriage again, his eyes scanning over the area with more interest and care, trying to see what he might have missed that gave him pause. Carriage, chariot, carriage, pinkalicorn, carriage, wagon. The same things as before. He shrugged, heading off into the guardhouse again. Nothing interesting out here. Must have been that possum that was always hanging around. Asterisk. Cadence smiled as the guard trotted off. Her spell had worked well all night. She had been right behind Twilight and Prince for most of their date and neither of them had even noticed her. It was a little upsetting that the pair had not worked out, though the goal here was more to get them both more comfortable with others rather than have them fall in love with the first person they had the slightest interest in. She couldn't make love where there was none after all. Had there been enough of a spark she could have made it much more. But neither wanted to continue, so she simply let it go. There would be others. She was sure of it. Author's note. Finally. This part of the story took way too long to finish. The run at the beginning was based off the run in Ferris Bueller's Day Off for anyone who was wondering. Should be one more chapter before the season starts, maybe two. Episode 1, Puppies Are Magic is coming. And likely a Nightmare Night bonus chapter as well. End author's note. End chapter 15. Dog Eat Dog. Epilogue.